Hi there, everybody. Welcome to our first TTC Tuesday. We particularly welcome you plus size TTCers out there like me. A lot of my friends would probably laugh and be completely shocked if and when they find these videos. I'm a very private person and I don't typically put myself out there like this, but I kind of feel like if there are other women out there, women and men, I guess, who are plus size and trying to conceive, then if I can help us all in any way, then it's absolutely worth it. I certainly hope I can help some other plus size TTCers out there through Ken and my journey. That being said, if you are someone who knows me outside of YouTube and you don't want to find out too much about me, or if you are someone who is uncomfortable with me talking about things like sex or menstrual cycles or cervical or ovulation, then maybe TTC Tuesdays aren't the vlogs for you. Please watch on Sunday and Friday. Those are vlogs that we really won't be mentioning TTCing too much, but Tuesdays are exclusively about our journey to having a baby, hopefully. One more thing before we get started. A brief chat about the comment section on this or any of our other vlogs. If your comment is anything other than kind or supportive or encouraging, if it does anything other than offer hope or constructive criticism or support, then I ask you not to post. I will be deleting anybody's posts who are hurtful. I will be blocking anybody who posts things that are cruel and unnecessary. I would like to foster a community in the comment section where people feel comfortable talking and they aren't hurt by the things that are being said. They are bolstered, they are helped, they are encouraged, and they understand that this is a kind place. This is a place where you can come and talk about your journey and maybe get some help, at least if nothing else, maybe get some understanding. I know that I am overweight. I know that the first thing a doctor will tell me when I go in telling them that I would like to conceive, I know that the first thing that they will tell me is that I need to lose weight. And I am working on that. That is a journey that's a long journey. I am improving. I am getting better. I have acknowledged that I have had an eating disorder for many, many years, and I am improving. I am making better decisions, and I am confronting those compulsions. I am actively working on eating healthier. I am actively working on exercising. I am actively working on making better choices. That being said, I am a woman in my mid-30s, and I recognize and understand that the years that I have to have children are limited. So I don't want to wait however long it will take me to lose 100 or 150 pounds that the doctor will ask me to lose. There are women out there, thousands of women every year like me, who have children. I am unwilling to accept that my weight excludes me from fulfilling this dream. Despite what many people have told me throughout my life, I am allowed to have the same dreams and aspirations as someone who is not overweight. So Ken and I are not waiting until we lose weight. Alright, so let's start today by talking about some of the lexicon of trying to conceive, or you're hit by this wall of acronyms, you feel completely confused. Let's talk about some of the anagrams, let's talk about some of the terminology, so that in the future when you're watching these vlogs, if I say something, you're not completely thrown off by what I'm saying, and you'll know already what I'm talking about. So the big one, obviously, the first one is TTC, which means trying to conceive. And there are a couple of other anagrams that I might mention on these videos, though it seems unlikely. I'm not really an anagram type of person. I usually will just say it so that I'll usually just say it because that's the kind of person I am. So, but there's BBT, which is basal body temperature, and we'll get into that later, if not in this vlog, but maybe one of the next one or two. There's the BFN or BFP, which is the big fat negative and big fat positive. Those are the things that people, those are the terms that people will use when they're taking pregnancy tests. There's DPO, which is days past ovulation, which is DPO, is really particularly important at this phase because we are trying to figure out when we ovulate, and then we are also, once we know when we have ovulated, we know when we can start testing for a pregnancy. Then there is LP or luteal phase. I don't know how much I'll use this either in acronym or in terminology, but we will be talking at some point about the different phases of your menstrual cycle. And luteal phase is one of those phases, one of those sections of your cycle. OPK, which is ovulation predictor kit, we will be talking about those. Ant flow or AF. I am not comfortable with this term. A lot of people are because it's an easier or less squicky way to say your period. But I'm just going to say my period. I'm just going to say, menstrual cycle. It's not cutesy. Periods are not cutesy, and maybe that's why they people use the term ant flows, because they make this thing that is somewhat more charming. But no, I'm not going to use ant flow. But some people in the TTC community, a lot of people in the TTC community, do use the acronym AF or the term ant flow. BD or baby dance. This is another one that I will not be using, but it is very common in the TTC community. It just means having sex. Sex is sex. Now, I think it's interesting because I think it's possible that people use BD or baby dance to differentiate between having sex on at a normal time or during a normal day, and BD or baby dance when it is with the intention of getting pregnant. They know they are ovulating, or they will be ovulating soon, and this kind of sex is specifically for the purpose of having a child. But I'm just not comfortable with the term. I think, again, it makes something cutesy in a way that I just don't, it's not me. So, CD is not an acronym I'll probably be using, but Cycle Day, which is what CD's, the acronym for Cycle Day, or CD is the acronym for Cycle Day. I probably will be using the term Cycle Day, and that's just every menstrual cycle is a specific number of days. And you can talk about cycle days at any point. Say this is cycle day 4, cycle day 14. And that's helpful if you don't know when you've ovulated or when you will ovulate. So you could say that I am on cycle day 14 now, instead of saying, it's 3 days past DPO or days past ovulation. So, cycle day, CD. CF or CM, which is cervical fluid or cervical mucus. Not pleasant to think about, but it is something that is a component of fertility. It's a component of whether or not you have ovulated or are going to ovulate. In the book that I'll be talking about later, cervical fluid and cervical mucus are two terms that are pretty important to one section of the book. So it's out there. The terms are there. We're just going to have to deal with them. So those are the main words that are used in the TTC community and their acronyms. The acronyms are much more used when you're just in text. So if you're on message boards and things like that, they use the acronyms so they don't have to spell the words out. Like I said, I am very much a fan of just using the terms, but I'll probably, and especially in video, it makes sense to use the terms in speaking rather than the acronyms. So, all right, the next thing I would like to do is to talk about some of the apps that I have started using or have used in the past to help me track my cycle, to help me figure out when it is I'm ovulating, and to kind of give me an idea on my fertility health. I have tried in the past what is it called? Menstrual Period Tracker and Ovulation Calendar. That is an app that is available on iOS. It is very simplistic, and it continually asks you to purchase the full version, and it also has ads. But it is very simple and very easy to use. It doesn't have some of the extra things in it like ovulation predictor, but it will keep track of when your period is supposed to start, and it'll predict that. But it's very simple, and it's good for people who aren't actively trying to conceive. I have also used My Days, the period and ovulation tracker. Another good one. Both of those are free, but I didn't find that it was terribly accurate. You know, it would predict my period and it would be off by a couple of days, you know, before or after. And that's not okay. Then there was Eve, the period tracker, menstrual calendar, and sex tips. It is another good tracker, but it was geared more towards women who didn't want to be pregnant. It was, you know, it offered a lot of tips on how to avoid pregnancy, and like, be careful today, ladies. It would send you like notifications. Be careful today. You might get pregnant if you have sex with unprotected. So, it didn't have any of the benefits of the apps that are geared toward women who are trying to conceive. The app that I'm using right now was suggested to me by one of my best friends, and it's called Ovia. It is incredibly good at tracking your symptoms, the symptoms of ovulation, and symptoms of your period, so that you can kind of track as you go along. The more information you fill out, the more information you have to look back on and say, oh, I'm experiencing an acne breakout. But that's pretty typical based on my past experience, or what, you know, the past logs, that I typically will have an acne breakout or a pimple or something around this day in my cycle. I just recently started using, and by recently I mean today, started using an app called Overgraph, and it's by the people of the book Taking Charge of Your Fertility, which is a book I will be reviewing either next week or in 2 weeks. I don't have enough experience with it yet to either recommend or advocate against this app. So I will update you in a few weeks just to see how using this app is. Both Ovia and Overgraph offer the opportunity to track your basal body temperature and other symptoms relating to your cycle. So just like Ovia, where you can kind of look back on your records and to see when you've experienced particular symptoms and things like that, you can also do that with Overgraph. The benefit that I can see so far of Overgraph is that there is a greater amount of information that you're allowed to input into the system. And it also takes into account women who are in the fertility process, you know, and are going to fertility doctors, are taking medications for it, and things like that. So you can keep track of your medications. You can keep track of tests that are being done. So far it seems a lot more specific, and a lot more you have an opportunity to input a lot more information into Overgraph compared to Ovia. So as of right now, I'm using Ovia and Overgraph. I might switch to just Overgraph, depending on how user-friendly it is. Ovia is very user-friendly, so we'll see. I'll let you know in a few weeks how it's going. So the book that I would like to talk to you about today is Making Babies. It is by Sami David, MD, and Jill Blakeway, LAC. Dr. David is a reproductive endocrinologist. He was the first doctor in New York State to perform a successful IVF, but he now prefers to focus on more conservative approaches to fertility. Jill Blakeway, LAC, a licensed acupuncturist, a board-certified herbalist, and the founder and clinical director of the Unova Center, which is in New York. The book is designed to be a 3-month premester, a program to help you and your body prepare for pregnancy. Its main focus is to address fertility issues in as natural a way as possible. While the authors appreciate the advances that have been made in assisted reproductive technologies, they both believe there are far easier, more natural, and far less expensive alternatives to IVF and IUI and other more invasive procedures to all, not all, but most fertility issues. And the book goes through all of the main things you should be doing to improve your fertility, like exercise and diet and vitamins and supplements and tracking your BBT and tracking the viscosity of your cervical fluid. The main difference in this book, though, is that they've pooled their clinical experience to create 5 different fertility types to help readers identify the general pattern that's at work in each person's body. And this is for both men and women, and I appreciated that about the book, is that they are just as interested in determining a male's fertility type as they are a female's fertility type. I'm not going to go through each of the 5 fertility types, but if you take the quiz that's in the book or on the website, then it'll place you in 1, maybe 2 fertility types. And who doesn't love quizzes? I'm a Ravenclaw. Melissa McCarthy would play me in a movie, and cheese is my spirit food. Just in case you were wondering. So then, once you know what type you are, I think I'm stuck and tired, which isn't that a metaphor for my life. Then you can read the chapters that are based on your fertility type, and then each of those chapters will give you the author's recommendations for diet. And this is not just saying, well, eat healthy foods and, make sure you're not eating lots of fats or fried foods. This is saying, like, it's particularly important for you to focus on having 50% vegetables, 30% complex carbs, and 20% protein in your meal. Whereas another one could have 40% protein, 40% veggies, and 20% complex carbohydrates. So they really tailored it to each type so that you know what kind of foods you should be eating. It also will mention what kinds of foods you should be eating specifically. Like, you really should be focusing on having leafy vegetables or broccoli or sauerkraut. And then the things that you should stay away from. Some people are supposed to some of the types are supposed to stay away from as many complex carbohydrates as possible, which is, they say that's not something that they recommend for most women or men who are trying to conceive. So that was kind of interesting, as I would just assumed, I think, that most people should stay away from complex carbohydrates, but they actually say that most people who are trying to conceive should consume the complex carbs, whole grains, and things like that. I, unfortunately, am supposed to limit my carbs, which is a tragedy. That one's going to be tough, but I will try. Each type then also goes through the kinds of exercising you should be doing. What kinds of exercises, the intensity of your exercises, at what point in your cycle you should be exercising. When you're on your period, you should be doing this level of exercising, but during your 2nd and 3rd phase, you should be exercising with this intensity. During your 4th phase, make sure you're doing this or not doing this. So I thought that was really interesting. It also goes into very specifically the kinds of vitamins and minerals that your fertility type should be taking. Yes, they have a list of vitamins and minerals that anybody who's TTCing should be taking, but if there's a vitamin and a mineral that is particularly important to your fertility type, they will mention that. If there is a type of vitamin or mineral that you should not be taking based on your fertility type, they will also mention that. Lifestyle changes you should consider, such as maybe trying meditation or yoga, or limiting your time near electrical devices, or trying to take cooler showers. And then the other thing is when you should be talking to your doctor about specific things, like if your basal body temperature is particularly high during your luteal phase or something like that. Then they have a list of times, like what you should be looking for to mention to your doctor. And then finally, in each of the sections or each of the chapters, it talks about what Chinese medicine can do for you in that particular fertility type. I really liked this book. I thought it was incredibly hopeful. There are so many, they had so many case studies in the book, and it was women and men who are at such different places in their fertility journey. There were women and men who were just starting out and wanted to make sure that they were healthy enough. There was one woman who was 10 years into her quest to have a child, and anybody anywhere in between. They had case studies that ran the whole gamut, which was, I think, as good as that is, as wonderful as being hopeful is, I also worry that a lot of the people who read this book will get a false sense of hope. And maybe hope is never a bad thing. Maybe it's perfectly acceptable for them to encourage people to be hopeful about their fertility situation. I just worry about people getting hurt, I guess. Hurt by the hope that comes from reading this book and feeling like if you've been on your fertility journey for a very long time, that this book, and just read this book, there's a renewed sense of hope. And people who have been on their journey for so long have probably faced so many moments of sadness, moments of despair. I worry about the potential for even more disappointment and more sadness. So that's just my little empath, little heart going out towards out to those people that I guess maybe a lot of people wouldn't see that it encourages people to be hopeful, or that it creates hope in people as a bad thing. I'm just worried about people getting hurt. I also really like that it encourages people to look for more natural solutions, that they advocate for putting off IVF and IUI, those things, for a little while until you've tried their book, until you've tried their program, until you've tried more, more natural solutions to your potential fertility issues. On the other hand, I'm very much a person who does devil's advocate here. On the other hand, are they naive about the options women have in non-urban areas in finding someone who practices Chinese medicine? I don't live in an urban area. I don't live near an urban area. I don't know if I were to want to find somebody who practices Chinese medicine, who practices acupuncture through the gaze of Chinese medicine. I don't know if I would have that option available to me. I don't know that option would be available to a lot of women who live in more rural areas. That's my number one most hated word, is rural. Are they also naive to the option women have for doctors who are advocates for more natural ways of tackling fertility issues? That in the book they said something about how they're always concerned when women come in and say that they don't know what their fertility issue is, that they have undiagnosed fertility issues, because some doctors are completely willing and satisfied with accepting a diagnosis of undisclosed fertility issues, and that's it. That either ends your quest to have a child, or it moves you on to more invasive fertility treatments. So if you don't have access to doctors who are willing to work with you, who are willing to work with alternative medicines, who are willing to try and find more natural alternatives, who aren't willing to accept a diagnosis of undisclosed or undiagnosed fertility issue, then I don't know how realistic this book is for those people who can't find doctors who are like that. I wonder how many people would be in that situation, or are in that situation, where they don't have access to those kinds of doctors. The big benefit of this book is that it is extremely straightforward. You take your test, figure out what kind of fertility type you are, and then you follow their recommendations for 3 months to see if anything improves. And I think that that's great. I mean, it's very straightforward. You have a time frame in which this should be working. So I don't think that there's a drawback to following their recommendations. And in the future, as I read more books on fertility, I'm going to compare those books to this book to see if there's any similarities, to see if there's correlatives, to see if any of the other books disagree with this one. We'll see. But for now, I absolutely would recommend reading Making Babies and following their 3-month program. I would also advocate for guarding your hearts. I don't want to encourage people to be cynical or to be pessimistic. What I would like, though, is to make sure that as people read this book, they are aware that sometimes life is unfair. And as hopeful as this book may make you, that still doesn't change reality. So that's it for this TTC Tuesday. I will see you next week.